Hey everyone, welcome to a very quick scattershot episode of the Observation Lounge because I got to go to the New York premiere of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I'm going to give you my non-spoiler thoughts before it premieres this Thursday. Let's dig in. So first off the bat, I should let you know that this is a brand new channel. So if you like this content, please subscribe, please share it, please like it, please comment, please interact with it in any way so that this content can be shared more broadly. Also, you can further support me by following me on Instagram and Twitter at OBS Lounge ST. That's OBS Lounge ST for Star Trek, the Observation Lounge. Apologies, as apparently this is now the time the apartment has decided to vacuum the hallways, so you might get a little of that in the background, but I wanted to get this out to you really quick. And of course, if you want to support the channel at A+ levels, think about subscribing to patreon.com/The Observation Lounge. You'll get access to videos like these early, before anyone else. Patreon got this the night before. Exclusive videos, exclusive stuff, all sorts of stuff. Go on the Patreon, look at it. Thank you for supporting me if you choose to, and in whatever way you do choose to. Okay, so let's start off with some disclaimers. I'm going to give a completely non-spoiler review, which means I'm not going to get into plot points, and I'm not going to get into too much into connections into the previous season. However, at a point where I will draw the line, I am going to talk about general themes, people who kind of lead the episode, what kind of episode it is, things that you might consider spoiler territory, but I will draw a harsh line in that. So if you don't want anything, any other inkling than just my reaction to what I saw and what I thought, you can stop there. Don't at me, I warned you. The last thing before I get into it is I am going to say a little bit about my relationship with Star Trek Strange New Worlds so you understand the point of view that I'm coming from. So if you watched other episodes on this channel, you will know that my entry point into the Star Trek universe was Star Trek The Next Generation, and so that is kind of my standard for, what I like from a Star Trek episode. A little less action adventure, a little more philosophical, a little more, sci-fi science based, world building, ins and outs of the ship, world building of Starfleet and the Federation and the Alpha Quadrant, and so that sort of tone and tenor, morality issues, ethical dilemmas, teamwork coming together to solve a problem. All of those things are really my Star Trek. Apparently my dog has also decided to be involved in this. So you're just going to get tons of noise. You're going to get vacuum cleaners. You're going to get a dog frantically pacing the living room for reasons unknown. Actually, reason might be said vacuum cleaner. You get what you get. I want to get this out as quickly as possible. So back to my entry point into Star Trek and my relationship with Strange New Worlds. I have had certain concerns with the new Star Trek shows. Strange New Worlds I have enjoyed as a very well-produced, fun, action-adventure science fiction show. But to me, with the exception of, the set dressing and the characters, it hasn't felt very Star Trek to me. Other people may and do have different opinions, but it felt more like a general sci-fi action-adventure show than it did the thing that makes Star Trek Star Trek. I felt like a lot of these, not all, but a lot of the season 1 could have been in any sci-fi franchise. I also feel that there were certain instances where Strange New Worlds got the ethos of Star Trek completely wrong. For instance, I believe it was the second episode with the mystical comet and going to crash. Very quickly, Pike makes a reference to the Prime Directive of how they don't interfere in undeveloped societies, but we still don't let people die, so let's intervene. And they were like running around being the savior cowboys of the galaxy. I mean, TNG pen pals. We had a whole episode regarding the moral dilemma and ultimately choosing to break the rules. I feel that New Trek is much more focused on the story they want to tell, and if Star Trek gets in the way, they'll hand wave it or ignore it or change it. Where I feel like Berman Trek, for the most part, had its clearly defined rules, and you had people at the top saying, you can do this, you can't do this. This is protecting what the general concepts and world of Star Trek are. And I feel that there are many times that if science gets in the way, or even fake science, the rules of the fake science, how the transporter works, how this and that, they'll quickly abandon it if it doesn't serve the story they want to tell. It's just a choice, and it's a choice that New Trek has made that I don't agree with. So I'm laying this out so you know. So I watched season 1 of Strange New Worlds. I've been rewatching it to get myself ready. I'm not quite there yet in finishing it, the season 1, but I like it. But for me, every episode, there's something that is just like, wow, man, you didn't quite stick the landing in order to like make this a great Star Trek show as opposed to a great show. And so, knowing that of how I enter Strange New Worlds and how I came into that show, this is my reaction, non-spoiler and not even close to spoiler reaction to the first episode. If you have the same concerns that I do over the excess use of action adventure, really amping up the space battle and the hand-to-hand combat and all that sort of stuff, if you have concerns, if that's not really your cup of tea, if you wish they do less of that, you will be disappointed. This episode is a Strange New Worlds episode. So if you like Strange New Worlds, if you like its tone, if you like its quippy humor, if you like how the people interact with each other in Starfleet, if you like how the people behave as Starfleet officers, if you like the abandonment of more, philosophical morality sort of in favor of just a cool action story, which Berman Trek did from time to time. I'm just saying I think we lean far more into it now in New Trek. Whatever your feelings are about Strange New Worlds, that's what you're going to feel about this first episode. It is incredibly well done. It's beautiful to look at. The actors are great. The plot is solid. I think the dialogue is great. I feel like in the first season, there were several episodes that were just too cute. The humor was just too cute and bordered on unprofessional. I didn't like Pike beaming down and being like, hi, like, stop it. You're a Starfleet captain. Stop it. And you're trying to be cute. I don't like it. And, I love the character of Ortega, but I felt like Ortega maybe took the sassiness just like a little too far at times. And that has nothing to do with the actress. The actress is wonderful. It has to do with how it's been written and how it's been directed. That's just my personal opinion. So if you feel however you felt about season 1 is exactly how you're going to feel about the first episode. And that is where I can't really talk any more about the episode without venturing into spoiler-ish. I will announce when I start talking, so you can turn this off when at your leisure. I am not going to give you plot points. I'm not going to tell you what happens. I'm not going to give major stuff. But I'm going to tell you what pieces of the trailer, if you've seen the trailer, are in this episode, what kind of episode it is, the characters I liked, the things that you're going to know something coming into the episode if you continue listening from this point. So, this is wading the waters without full spoilers, and there will be no full spoilers in this video. So, proceed at your own discretion. The first episode feels far more like a Star Trek movie than a Star Trek episode. It's, of course, episode length, but in the same way that, the Trek shows were a bit smaller and, special effects and action, and it has to do with the time and the budget, that old Trek had. But because of their restraints, the show was a bit restrained. And it's something that I personally like. I like having some limits. And when you get to the movies, it allows you far more action adventure and you hype it up more for a general audience. And that's what this episode does. This episode feels like if it added another plot and another hour, in fact, maybe if it combined it with the second episode, I really don't want to talk about that yet. That's going to be a separate video, but do I want to talk about it? Maybe it could have been a feature, but it feels like a feature. It has some Star Trek 3 vibes, right? And it's very much a Spock episode. Pike appears very little in this episode. This is, so from the trailer, this is Spock in command of the Enterprise. And this is our appearance of the Klingons. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Klingons. We are back to TNG DS9 Voyager era Klingons. They look like those Klingons. They act like those Klingons. Their culture and world is built like those Klingons, married with a little bit of Star Trek 6 Klingons, which felt a little more, I don't know. There was a different sort of danger and bravado, different from just like the, today is a good day to die side of things. There was a bit, I don't know if you know what I mean, but the Star Trek 6 Klingons had a little bit different of a flair. So I would almost say they're a little more like Star Trek 6 Klingons. And Star Trek 6 is kind of an influence in this as well. So if you like Star Trek 3 and you like Star Trek 6, you're probably going to like this episode. So all of my previous stuff, taken in terms of what you want from a Star Trek episode. The Klingon makeup, back to its original makeup, for those of you who were unhappy with how the Discovery Klingons were, that's gone. We're back to regular old Klingons looking like Klingons from the 90s. The makeup, the differentiation between Klingons is great. Sometimes, and again, no judgment, the budget you have, the constraints you have. TNG and Deep Space Nine Klingons, the foreheads would be a little different, but they all pretty much, if they were in the background, they were all kind of fuzzy. And they all pretty much looked the same. These Klingons are very varied skin tones, the types of ridges, the kinds of ridges. I will tell you, there is a minor role of a very imperious female Klingon that gives real Kalar meets Star Trek 3 Cruz's lover mate from the beginning, gives that kind of vibe, and she's delightful. I like her a lot. You get male Klingons, female Klingons. You get a lot of Klingons, and they're all acting great, the way that you want them to. The plot is interesting. I will tell you that aside from being an action adventure, it is at its best when it works to gel the crew as a family. On the other hand, you've got a lot of stunt work and hand-to-hand combat fighting, which, in a Klingon episode might be kind of expected. For my personal taste, it went on way too long. And a lot of slow motion fighting and quick motion fighting. And just there's a lot fight. I feel like, however, and I won't say anything about it, but who's fighting, how they're fighting, and why they're fighting, I think might be a setup for future episodes. I think it's planting a seed for something that's going to be addressed later, and in that respect, I like it. Let's talk about Carol Kane. Carol Kane makes her appearance as Pelia. She steals the episode. It's not her episode, but she steals the episode by being Carol Kane, who is an icon and incredible. I will tell you this. Whatever you think she is, she isn't. There is more to her, and they reveal it right away. It's not a secret. She explains, or it's explained who she is. We get an interesting accent from the character in the vein, she's not a Betazoid, in the vein of how Marina Sirtis had to make up an accent, right? There's a reason Carol Kane has to have a specific accent. That will be revealed very immediately from watching the episode. which is fun. It's a little hard for the ear to catch onto it for a minute. You're like, what is she saying? And then you get into it. She's funny because she's Carol Kane, and her character has a connection to pre-established canon that is done, in my view, the right way. And it's actually quite touching. When she says how she knows someone, it's very, oh, right. I had a problem with shoehorning Michael Burnham as surprised Spock had a sister and then explaining why we never heard about her. I felt that was too shoehorned and changed canon rather than expanded it. I am sure a lot of you disagree with me. I know. I hear you on Twitter. Apparently I'm a gatekeeper. No, I'm the troll under the bridge with riddles. I just didn't like it. I thought it was a bridge too far. The way they do this one, it is simply an addition to canon that doesn't impact anything and doesn't make you wonder why it was never mentioned. It never needed to be mentioned in anything you saw, but it is a great way to tie it to pre-existing canon without retconning anything, without making anything not make sense, without it being very fan fiction-y. I felt the Michael Burnham push was very fan fiction-y. Of course, like a fan fiction novel would be like the author saying, this character, based on me, guess what? They're Spock's sister, and you didn't know. And it's just like, okay. Like, great for fan fiction, maybe not for the show itself, for actual canon. That's how I felt about Michael Burnham. That's not this. I think it's done very well. It's fun, for sure. It's a fun little action romp. Well written. The dialogue has improved. I think it was pretty good in season 1, but again, I think there were times where the comedy was just a little too nudge, nudge, wink, wink, like bordering on unprofessionalism on the bridge that I didn't care for. They find the right tone, and I really like how Ortegas was written in both this and the second episode. That character doesn't feel, unprofessional or unworthy of Starfleet. They're just, a snarky, sarcastic professional. They've toned that down in a way that I really enjoy, and now I always liked the character as a character. I just didn't feel like, no, they're not very Star Trek. They're not very Starfleet. Now I believe it. I think they've done a great job of sort of reining it in just a little bit, but not losing the fun of that character. They have also set up seeds for what M'Benga's new story is going to be, and I love it so much more than the daughter story. I did not care for the daughter story. I liked the concept of it, but the episode where they dealt with it, even though I loved the sort of not holodeck episode, I thought that was fun and a fun way to do it. How the daughter left and that he was just okay with like, okay, bye, have fun. I kind of painted him as a bad father in my view. I was like, you're not a very good father for doing this. But what they're setting up, what I think they're setting up as M'Benga's story for the season, and particularly playing on the relationship with Chapel and their pre-existing relationship that they have, I think we're going to learn a lot more about that, and I like where it's going. I like it, and I feel like we're about to have a really good M'Benga season where we really like him and feel for what he is going through. And I won't say any more than that because then I think we venture into true spoiler territory. Spock and the Spock Chapel thing. It is addressed. It is dealt with in a way, and it's not concluded. This show is gonna play a undercurrent of affection between Chapel and Spock. We know that. It is present in this episode. However, I feel like, and again, please don't at me. Drop it in the comments. I could use the engagement. Fight me there. I don't like the way that Spock is being written in Strange New Worlds. And I'll tell you why. I think Ethan Peck is great. I think he does a great job with the writing and how they're doing the character. He's performing the character wonderfully. And it's entertaining. It's not that it's not good. And the stuff with him, I love Chapel. She's a great actress. Like it has nothing to do with it not being entertaining and not being well acted and not being, an interesting story. It just changes Spock in a way or adds a layer to Spock that I don't think lines up with the rest of canon. I think it's a strange diversion. My personal opinion is that it's very difficult to write Spock. It's a very nuanced character because if not written well, an emotionless character can come across as quite boring and dry. So you have to find ways to continue to make them interesting. And also Spock is a huge iconic character, so like you have to do justice by Spock. So it's a tall order to write Spock well. And the biggest impediment being that he cannot be emotional. And so what I think Strange New Worlds has decided to do is find reasons for Spock to be emotional because it's easier that way. I think it's easier to find ways and excuses for him to be emotional and be able to write him emotional in the same way that they sort of wrote the Kelvin universe Spock, rather than, write Spock the way that we know Spock to be. So if you like what they're doing with Spock, you'll love this episode because it's his episode, right? It's in the trailer where he chooses his "I want to go now." I don't particularly like that, only because the whole thing of like everyone has their thing. No, they don't. Up until Pike, I believe, maybe in New Trek, but like other than Kirk in the 60s, like everyone in Old Trek, they said engage. That's what you said. Janeway said engage. Picard said engage. Sisko said engage. This whole thing of like every captain has that thing they say, for me is like, no, they don't. They talk like a professional and use the language and the jargon of the world of Starfleet. I sure, is hit it fun? Is it fun to see him say it? Sure. I don't think it's very Star Trek. It's one of those things that's too cute. And so Spock doing that thing, is it funny? Did it get a laugh in the room? Did I laugh? Yes, it works from a dramatic perspective. It works from an entertainment perspective. To me, it's just not very Star Trek. Just my personal opinion on that. So if you like Spock being un-Spock-like, and this version of Spock, you'll really like it. If you don't like Spock this way, I think you will still like the episode as an entertaining and fun episode, but you will continue to have your issue with the way that Spock's written, which you'll either get over or just continue to have and either enjoy the show or not enjoy the show or watch the show or not watch the show. That is your... I believe people are complex and, unlike what Twitter says, can have issues and things they don't like and still like the show and still watch it and still support it, but still have concerns. Unfortunately, in today's Twitter world, you either have to love everything or hate everything. Otherwise, you are you're a troll or a gatekeeper or a shill, or like those seem to be the only boxes now. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit of both. All right, so that is my reaction, non-spoiler, spoiler territory, floating on spoiler territory review. Sorry, this was put together really quickly because I wanted to get it out. I just saw it on Sunday. Thank you to Flip Kiki, the Star Trek drag queen from New York City, whom I know and invited me to be her +1 at this event, is the reason I got to see it. Thank you to Flip Kiki. Right, so in sum, if you like Strange New Worlds, it's a really great Strange New Worlds episode, true to its tone, its storytelling, its characterization. If you have issues with the way that Strange New Worlds is approaching Star Trek, I still think it's an incredibly enjoyable episode. It is well written, it is well paced, the dialogue is great, the character interactions are great. I do think we could have cut about 5 to 10 minutes of hand-to-hand combat, but it's not uninteresting. It's not entertaining. It's just a personal taste sort of thing, and, mileage will vary. And I think you will like how Mabenga is set up for the future. I think you will like resolution to a cliffhanger in season 1, and then the other cliffhanger being resolved in episode 2, which we know is the courtroom. So we know it's, come on, we know it's Una. And if you are someone who would like Strange New Worlds to be a little more like classic Trek, do not let this first episode dissuade you in any way, because episode 2, which I will make a separate video about, is the best episode of Strange New Worlds, will be a fan favorite episode, will be put in the list of top Star Trek episodes of all time, contains a special guest star playing a secondary character whom is so fantastic that cheers in the IMAX. People were so impressed with this actress, the actress playing Una's lawyer, a civil rights lawyer. It tackles a philosophical, moral issue of today through light touch metaphor. If you're paying attention, you know what it's talking about, but it is in no way ham-fisted. It is delicately done the way that the best TOS and Next Gen episodes did it. And it's right up there with them. If you are still making up your mind about Strange New Worlds, I implore you to stick around until the second episode, because I think you will be incredibly impressed. And listen, it's a courtroom Star Trek, and what do we compare that to? Weird ones where someone's on trial for murdering someone, usually a dude banging a ugly scientist's hot wife. Star Trek loves that plot. It's not that. It's right up there with Measure of a Man. I'm saying it. It's right up there. And just remember, there's a whole audience of people who are not going to come into Star Trek the way that you did, the way that I did. They're not going to start with Next Gen. They're not going to see Next Gen. It's older. It's an older show. They're entering Star Trek through Star Trek Now. And if you don't like that new fans are coming in of the flavor of, Discovery or seasons 1 and 2 of Picard, that's your personal opinion, you're welcome to it. If you don't think that's a good thing for the franchise and a good expansion of the fan base, you will be extremely pleased that there will be people who will enter this franchise having watched season 2, episode 2 of Strange New Worlds. All right, that will be a separate video, and I'm so dying to talk about that. I will film that very soon and get that out in advance of the premiere. Another non-spoiler reaction and general, thoughts and things that are in it, but without telling you anything, too bad. What are you excited about from what I said? Drop that in the comments. Interact with me over on social media at OBS Lounge ST, Twitter and Instagram. Support me on Patreon at The Observation Lounge. Listen to the weekly podcast, Fixing icky Star Trek episodes at Star Trek Zhuzh-erations, Zhuzh, wherever you get podcasts. You can hear me on the Captain's Couch. I just guessed it there. You can hear me on What's the T-Bev. I just guessed it there. I'm all over the Trek world now. Why? Because I was really engaged by Star Trek Picard Season 3, and I started looking at the YouTube YouTube content, and there were far too many anti-woke, right-wing nut jobs with too many freaking followers being served to me. And then after I watch a couple of those, suddenly my YouTube is feeding me Matt Walsh videos because they're of the same tenor. So I don't want that. And I just want there to be more content that is critical and thoughtful, not sycophantic like some of those out there, but more critical and thoughtful, but, doesn't get mad there are too many ladies on the bridge. So if you support channels like that, if you want to see content like that from people with voices like mine, please subscribe, like, share, comment, interact, Patreon. But until next time, get the hell off my bridge.